crowd control operations at soccer matches. It was not on the ground in any meaningful sense in most of Lebanese territory. And so when in the early years of the Bush administration, for example, Jordan offered to transfer tanks to Lebanon, and the administration and the Pentagon, we said, well, why bother? I mean, what are these things going to be used for? There was little rationale for the U.S. to supply the LAF. And there's this tacit acceptance of the Syrian occupation that suited several U.S. administrations. Lebanon was largely quiet, although Hezbollah capitalized on this, on the occupation to really develop into a dominant force. It was very convenient. The status quo for the United States changed after September 11, 2001. The Bush administration had a harder time accepting Damascus' preferred status as both arsonist and fireman, as peace partner and supporter of terrorism. And they ended business as usual. There were no more, for example, friendly routine visits by the Air War College officers going to Damascus and drinking tea with their Syrian counterparts after 2001. At the same time, in the war against terror, even before 2005, the Bush administration saw the potential strategic benefit in getting Syria out of Lebanon. With 2005 murder of Rafiq Hariri, it changed its status quo and presented an opportunity for Lebanon to exert some sovereignty over its own territory. With Syrian troops out, the Bush administration looked to help the government of Lebanon and to do so via the LAF. When we started the program, we conceived it as a project to develop the capacity of this rare national institution. We weren't, I think, overly ambitious in terms of our objectives. The U.S. assistance to the LAF was not intended to enable the army to take on Hezbollah, nor was it designed to help the LAF defend itself against Israel or against Syria, for that matter. No one in the Bush administration envisioned that the LAF would have the resources, the capacity, or that there'd be the political will to do any of these things. We also knew that it was an institution with some very real problems. 80% of the Lebanese Armed Forces' estimated budget of $800 million per year at the time goes to recurrent costs, salaries. I think, I don't have the exact figures on this, but it is, as noted earlier, a top-heavy force. A parliamentarian was complaining to me some years back that he's in the Defense Committee. And he said that we have 300 generals in Lebanon. They just appointed 100 more. I don't know how many retired. So that makes 420. And this is a force of 60,000 men. Right? The United States Army has 548,000 people, and we have 302 generals. Go figure. Also, the Lebanese Armed Forces is undertrained. As shooters previously, I think, were allocated for years, less than a full clip of bullets per year to train on. So given how little control the government of Lebanon actually exerted over Lebanese territory in the north and the south, we wanted to help the LAF to become a force that could actually defend security within the state via improving, by and large, its counterterrorism capabilities. The civilian leadership in the Pentagon at the time was pretty consistent about articulating this goal. The military, I think, a little bit less so. There were several announcements or statements where military officials spoke about the LAF somehow supplanting Hezbollah in terms of security in the south. But I think that certainly in terms of civilian leadership, we are under no illusions. Nevertheless, even so, with all these statements, U.S. assistance became a real source of conspiracy theories. During one visit to Lebanon by then Undersecretary of State of Defense for Policy, Eric Edelman, the opposition newspaper Al-Akhbar ran a story claiming that the U.S. was establishing an air base in northern Lebanon from which it would stage an attack on Syria. Regardless, another benefit of the FMF program for the U.S. government would be that the U.S. government would actually maintain contacts with the LAF and not abandon Lebanon to the influence of Iran and Syria. It was a way of maintaining connection, hopefully gaining some influence. Based on the mission requirements as we saw them and Lebanon's own budgetary constraints, we came up with a package of equipment that we thought was sensible and sustainable. This did not include weapons that would enable the LAF, for example, to shoot down Israeli F-16s, but that wasn't how we saw the Lebanese Armed Forces mission. There wasn't a problem in releasing weapons to the LAF, as noted earlier. They have an excellent record, the best in the region, on not retransferring weapons, and they don't end up in Hezbollah's hands, contrary to what many people in Congress fear. There have been complaints by Israel regarding certain transfer of systems to Lebanon, just like there have been through the years about transfer of U.S. equipment to Egypt and to Jordan. I can tell you that when I was in the Pentagon, Israel did not exercise any effective veto power over U.S. arms sales to Lebanon. You know, oftentimes, I know this happened later with UAVs, there were some complaints, but these were largely ignored by the Pentagon. Likewise with other Arab countries as well. Fixed-wing fighter jets were always going to be prohibitively expensive, not only to donate or provide to Lebanon, but to maintain. Helicopters were on the list, Cobras. If we could find them, they're still in service by the U.S. Marines, my understanding. But so availability was a problem, but in principle, there's no problem with attack helicopters for Lebanon. In any event, there was no illusion that Lebanon, via the LAF, could defend itself from Israel, even if we gave them the systems they requested. Syria, with a budget of some $6 billion a year, can't protect their nuclear weapons facility from Israel. Lebanon certainly wouldn't be getting that kind of funding. And I think in a greater sense, and we never really talked about this, but just you know, the nature of what might happen to Lebanon should the LAF try and engage Israel, I think it's not a pretty picture. And we can look at just at what happened after in 2006, after the Chinese-made C-802 rocket was fired from Lebanon and nearly sunk the Israeli missile cruiser, the Hanit. Israel responded by destroying all of Lebanon's naval radar stations, and did so because they believed that Hezbollah tapped into one of these radar stations to use the radar from land, so that the ship, to make a long story short, the ship was hit because the missile, because the ship didn't know the missile was coming, didn't turn on its countermeasures. And this was only possible because the missile was tracking the ship via land-based radar. U.S. policy has always been that if Hezbollah were integrated into the Lebanese armed forces and becomes part of the state, as opposed to a state within a state, that the U.S. would accept the Party of God as a political party and no longer consider it a terrorist organization. But everyone knew and believed in the Pentagon that this was pretty slim chances that this would happen. Largely, not only because of an understanding of Hezbollah based on a worldview from the neocons, but more so based on what Hezbollah says about itself. It won't give up its weapons, it says, until Israel withdraws from Lebanon, fair enough, until the 7 Shiite villages in northern Israel are liberated, until Jerusalem's liberated, until the government of Lebanon is no longer corrupt. And this, per Naim Qassem in 2010, he said, quote unquote, the resistance was not present because of a situation, but because of a principle. And the principle does not end because a situation changes. The resistance is a vision and a methodology, not just a military reaction. These guys say they're here to stay, regardless of what happens. So Hezbollah isn't going to put down his arms just because the LAF becomes more capable. It's unrealistic, and that's not, and never was, the purpose of the U.S. military program with the LAF. Now, there are a lot of policy challenges for Washington as we move ahead in the coming years. You know, big questions, I think, that I can't really answer, but I'll throw some of them out there. Will the LAF remain a neutral actor in Lebanon's complex sectarian mosaic?